This is Community Forum, a community service of CAN TV. I'm Juan Carlos Hernandez. Our guests today are Katelyn Johnson and Alvesta Sanders. They are both from Action Now, an organization that works with people in low-income areas in our city. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, let's start off by talking to each of you about and what you do with Action Now. Our first guest here is Alvesta Sanders. Welcome and thanks for being here.
Well, thank you for inviting us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm a board member of Action Now, so we kind of get the direction going on what we're going to work on.
Okay. So how long have you been part of the board?
I've been on the board for about 2 years or 2.5 years.
Mm-hmm. And what brought you, I mean, a lot of people are out in the community, they see issues and problems and they don't necessarily always get so involved that they join the board of an organization.
Well, I felt like everyday working people,
Mm-hmm.
we need a voice. And the more people we have, the more powerful we are. And so I became a part of Action Now. It was much later before I became on the board, before I got on the board, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
But I became a member so we can do something in our neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm. Which is important work. Our second guest is Ms. Katelyn Johnson. Welcome and thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
You are the executive director. Tell us about how you came to Action Now and part of the many tasks you do for the organization.
I came to Action Now. I've been there for a while as a community organizer.
Okay.
Part of the role of a community organizer is to go door to door and talk to community members about issues and concerns that they have and what their vision for their community is, and organizing people to build the power to make those changes that they want to see. And after doing that for a while, I was named ED about 2 years ago, shortly after she got on the board.
So how long did you do the door knocking and how was that experience?
I love door knocking.
Mm-hmm.
I liked talking to people. I liked being able to hear people's stories. But I think for me, the biggest thing was the transition of leadership and really building grassroots leaders who were dedicated to their community and who loved Action Now and who wanted to really make a difference and make some changes to society. So I was an organizer overall for about 10 years.
10 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a sense of what Action Now, what the organization is and what it's about. Tell us what Action Now's focus is, because you talk about developing leaders, you said door knocking, you mentioned the fact that you saw issues out there that you wanted to address as a person and wanted to get involved in working. So what is Action Now for our viewers?
Okay, our focus is mainly justice.
Mm-hmm.
We believe that everybody has a right to get what they worked for and to be treated equally.
Mm-hmm.
And in our neighborhoods, we see a lot of things like foreclosures and things like that, and people get a little discouraged. And so we have to let them know that we can work together and bring our voices where the politicians will listen, and let them know that we are voters and that we need to get things done, and we band together and get all these things done.
When you talk about neighborhoods, Chicago is a city of neighborhoods. What neighborhoods specifically have you focused your work? And we did say low income, but tell me about the areas of the city where you work.
Yeah, we have chapters in Inglewood, North Lawndale, Garfield Park, Auburn Gresham, and we have emerging chapters in Roseland and some other communities in the city. We're in about 10 wards with chapters or emerging chapters.
Okay, and what are the, well, I want you to tell me certainly about the issues, but how do you go about helping recruit people into Action Now? You said door knocking. What happens after the door knocking? How have people responded to that? I'm sure some people are like, are they trying to convert me to religion or something? Is this a church?
Well, we have neighborhood meetings, monthly meetings. And
that does sound like justice and democracy.
right. And we have, like, for people to come out and they can actually get a real feel for what we do and what we stand for.
Okay.
Because the meetings are open. Anyone can come to the meeting. You don't have to be a member. And you can find out exactly what we're working on. And that's what really gets people involved, when they see that we care about everything that they care about, because we live in the neighborhoods. I live in Inglewood. And everything that affects everyone else affects me. So I'm very concerned about the neighborhood, the children, the schools, and everything, and they found out what we're concerned about and what we want to work on.
So tell me about your own experience. Is that how you came into Action Now? You went to a neighborhood meeting?
No, the first thing that happened with Action Now with me was someone called me, and they said that they were going to have an action against a bank in Hyde Park. Okay, this bank was not listening to the people that had mortgages with them. And so I said, okay, well, I'll go. So I went on this march. We marched, and it was very cold. And we
Was this
marched.
January? Or?
It was, yeah, I believe it was in January.
Wow.
And we marched and marched around and chanted, and the leaders went in and spoke to the people in the bank. Okay, the bank actually came out with the two people that had mortgages with them and talked to the people and actually did modifications. That day, I was hooked. That was it. I never saw anyone that actually did something for our community like that, and that was it for me.
Wow, and it wasn't even an elected official, right?
No.
It was the people actually going and taking the cause of justice into their hands.
Right,
Wow.
right. And I love that, and I've been here ever since.
Oh, that's great. So tell me about these monthly, a little more about these monthly meetings. What happens? How's the dynamic in that?
Yeah, so we have monthly meetings in several of our wards, and our members, like Ms. Sanders, there's a structure where our members are elected, and the chair people, you're chairperson of the 15th ward.
Right.
And so our members lead the meetings where we talk about the community issues, what people see going on in their neighborhood, and members strategize together to figure out how to change it.
And what are the, I'm sure it might change from community to community, but what are the big issues that low-income folks are facing in our city and that you're helping them to respond to?
Minimum wage jobs, for one, and foreclosures, and neighborhood schools.
Neighborhood schools.
That's a real big one, that, you know, people want their kids to go to school in their neighborhood, which is understandable. And also, like, say, foreclosures is a big one, but they also need money. You need money to spend money to help your community. If the more money you have, the more you spend, and the more you bring the economy up. And so those are one of our big ones.
That goes to, I'm sorry, I interrupted you, but that goes to raising the minimum wage, right?
Yes, yes.
So tell me about neighborhood schools, because it was really interesting. I was doing some research on your organization, and I saw a map of where the closing of the school closures have happened, and it's primarily in black, low-income communities in our city. I just saw all these little red dots all over the south side and in other areas, and I'm like, there's something racial behind this. That's how I interpreted the data. How I guess my question is, I mean, I'm surprised by, not surprised, but like, I was really like kind of upset by that, right? You know, but also like, I ask myself, how can people take this on and actually challenge politicians into doing more? And what have you done with Action Now?
So we focus a lot on parent leadership and parent engagement with the schools, but in relation to the school closings and how we can change that, we need an elected school board. And, you know, Chicago is the only city in Illinois that doesn't have one. And when
Not surprising.
Well, when the schools are being closed in black and brown communities, and you're completely right that there is a racial element to it, and especially when these communities have historically had disinvestment and have had destabilizing decisions made for them without actually engaging the community in the process, there's no accountability that CPS has to anybody who actually is affected by the decisions that they make. And so we're working on with other organizations in the city to fight for an elected school board, and actually bring the power back to the people who have the most to win and the most to lose when it comes to our public schools.
Okay, so tell me about this process for getting an elected school board. Is that going to be a referendum? Is it going to be a measure introduced in the city council? Is it going to be petitioning somebody downstate? How is that going to work? Because
all of it has to work together. And so we are, we recently just launched a huge effort to get elected school board on as a referendum in the city, in all 50 wards, and it's a huge opportunity for parents and community leaders and teachers and everyone who cares about the kids in the school to really get out there and use their vote to really speak powerfully to these elected officials, and then ultimately we definitely have to engage Springfield, because the decision will come from the General Assembly. So all of it has to work together, and the part that's exciting about it is it's like communities leading it and parents leading it and really taking charge and saying, like, this is what we want and this is how we have to get it.
And how do you respond to blowback? Because I imagine there is, and there are questions and people within the community itself that might say, well, those schools were failing. I want a good school. This charter school is going to give my child what he or she needs or what my children need. We should just trust, I don't know, maybe you do hear that, we should just trust the mayor and whatever his desires are.
I mean, I think that at the end of the day, people know what's best for their kids, and people know that these public schools have historically been under-resourced. So how can you expect a school to succeed when they don't have books, when they don't have libraries? And that has been the decision that has been handed down from CPS. And so CPS is telling these public schools, hey, your kids aren't good enough to have books, so it's time to fight back, and we have to stand up for ourselves.
And so what's your hope as Action Now as an organization? What's your projection? This will be passed in the next year, couple years?
I mean, I can't put a timeline on it. All I can say is that right now that the energy is just electric, and people are really fighting back in a way that's unprecedented. And I think that people, we had a launch, that was in Austin, it was a little bit ago, where like people just came out and were like, this resonates with people. Like people get that, like, hey, we need to, if we can elect our mayor and our alderman, why can't we elect the people who are making the decisions, for our schools? And so I think that we're in it for the long haul, however long that is. Okay.
Yeah, the work for social justice does require patience and a lot of work. I'm curious though as to how teachers become, how do they become part of this process, or do you invite them to become part of the process, or how does that?
Oh yeah, I mean, we work very closely with Chicago Teachers Union, but teachers, we have to recognize teachers are our neighbors too. Teachers are our members, and there's necessarily not a separation between a teacher and a community leader. Oftentimes they're the same people. And so it's part of working together as a community where we recognize that, when children come into school, they bring their communities with them to the classroom. And as teachers recognize that, and as communities recognize the power of a teacher, we're able to work together.
What if, I'm just curious, if people did want like charter schools and that's what they chose, how do you address that possible conflict? Because it has arisen in some communities, and I'm thinking of UNO charter schools and all the investment they had, and people say, I want this is what this school is offering.
I think the real choice people don't have are high quality, well-resourced public schools.
It comes back to that.
It comes back to that. It comes back to, we recognize that, as Ms. Sanders said earlier, kids need to be able to go to school in their neighborhood. And when you close schools and send kids across gain lines and send them hours out of their way to get to class, there's something wrong there. And so we want to make sure that people have full choices and have high quality public schools that are well resources that their kids can actually go to.
Okay, great. That brings me to another one, talking about choice and empowerment. Earning certainly a stronger, higher wage certainly empowers you and gives you more choices in life. Tell me about how Action Now has become part of the fight for 15. Ms. Sanders?
We started that.
Yes.
You started it?
We started it, yes.
Okay.
We started the fight for 15.
Well, tell me about that.
And because we realized that a lot of times people they work on Michigan Avenue in a big store. They can't even afford to buy a shirt in that store.
That's so true.
And they have to, you know, they don't have the hours. They don't have anything really to, you know, while this store is making all this money, this person that's putting in the work for them to make that money is not making any money themselves. And so that's what we first recognized. And so we started looking into how all these big stores especially have all this high-priced product, but the people that they employ cannot buy anything in the store. So that's one reason why we got started on that. And another thing is if a person don't make money, they can't spend money. And if you can't spend money, you're not putting money back into your community.
Right.
And so we felt like that, you know, they need a living wage, because, you know, if you work a full-time job, you should not have trouble putting food on the table or have to live in a homeless shelter. That shouldn't happen.
And there are many stories like that, right?
Yes.
Of people working full-time and having trouble putting food on the table.
Yes, it's a lot of that.
Can you tell me the story of a particular individual that you may, or a family you may have worked with that became part of this campaign that was having, without naming them, obviously, you don't have to name them, but.
Okay.
There are a lot. I mean,
Yeah,
part of what
there
we
really
did
are a
was really listening to workers' stories.
Right.
And we've had workers' forums where we just listened and heard their struggle, but also worked to build something big that they could fight back.
Right.
The story that comes to my mind is there's a gentleman who is a new father who hasn't been able to spend actual time with his infant child because he has to work 2 jobs.
2 jobs.
And it's still not enough to pay for taking care of a baby, taking care of a child. And when parents are taken away from their children because they're working 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet, something's still wrong. Because like Ms. Sanders was saying, like, they don't have enough hours, and then the hours that they do have don't pay enough. And all of it kind of builds to just this cycle of poverty that needs to be broken.
I don't know if you were able to read about, there's a story in the New York Times about this woman that died in her car because she was splitting up her time between several, Dunkin' Donuts, that's what it was, and she wasn't given full time at any one of these places in order to keep her, I guess, off the insurance or whatever it might be, and just this constant work and inability to have good sleeping time, and just ended up dying. And I'm sure that we don't necessarily always hear of those tragic stories. So you're just bringing a lot of things to mind. So what eventually brought you together and said to say we need to make this a campaign that we're gonna really launch and fight? How did that happen? And tell me about where it's gone and where you hope to go.
So the Fight for 15 movement that has really been led and geared with fast food workers and the fast food worker strikes that have happened all over the world, all of that came from the workers and came from really just having meetings. Like we have our monthly meetings, workers began to meet, and while we started organizing on Michigan Avenue and talking to retail workers, it just expanded because there are all these fast food places in between all the retail stores and just continued to grow. And it became this movement that really changed the narrative over the entire country about what it means to be poor and what it means to be a part of a movement that is working to address income inequality. And so it became, Fight for 15 has become its own entity, and it's amazing to watch and hear and listen to the worker stories who are fierce and just completely courageous to go out on strike and to really continue to fight for their rights. It's really inspiring for us, and especially when we remember canvassing on Michigan Avenue. It's come a long way, and it's really exciting to see because it's going to continue to grow, and more people are recognizing and seeing themselves in the struggle. So
by canvassing, you meant you went out to these stores and these restaurants and were talking to the workers?
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. How did management respond?
I mean, we
You were trying to be sneaky about it?
We weren't sneaky. We were very clear about what we were talking about. But it's, a lot of managers don't make a lot of money either. And, some managers are only making a quarter more than their employees. So it was just an interesting conversation all around.
Wow. So it's snowballed, right? And here in Illinois, tell me what happened. Well, we just had the referendum.
Yeah, so
non-binding, though.
Non-binding statewide referendum on raising the minimum wage in Illinois, and we won with 68% of the vote. So it's awesome that people across the state, bipartisan, people care about this and people want a raise in the minimum wage. And we had a non-binding referendum in the city based on $15 an hour. That was last year. And again, we won it with even higher percentages in the city. And so all across the board, minimum wage and actually having people who work full-time jobs be able to make a living is what people care about, like deeply care about.
And well, now the non-binding measure has been passed. What's the next step?
I mean, we have a lot of elected officials who see this as a public mandate, and it's moving, in Springfield. We have lobby days coming up to make sure that the elected officials respond to the voice of the people.
So you're taking busloads of people down there?
Of course we are. But it's really like being very clear, like this is our line and this is where we stand, and elected officials, you need to respond.
Okay. Do you think? Well, I know I asked for a timeline last time, but what's your hope? I mean, something soon, something.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear that it's immediate, that we've waited long enough, and that working people can't wait anymore. People are struggling. This is really, when you look at it, it's really life or death for some folks. Given the example that you just gave, like people need this raise now, and so we are calling on the elected officials to act immediately to raise the minimum wage. Wow.
Well, good luck with that, and certainly we have tons of supporters and supporters everywhere that will, I think, push that forward. One thing that does strike me in this conversation is that there seems to be a lot of education and empowerment that takes place at these meetings and through the course of all these campaigns. How exactly do you manage that? Because I'm sure some folks come in and say, well, I don't know a whole lot, but I'm not dumb, I'm smart. I just don't know exactly how to engage and how to be better prepared to take some of these issues on. How does that work with Action Now?
Yeah.
Well, when they come to the meetings, first of all, we find out what people are interested in, what's really bothering them, because we ask.
Right.
And they
so
tell us.
It's a lot of listening then.
It's a lot of listening. And when we're in Action Now, we have classes. We teach different things. So because everybody doesn't know everything,
Right. Almost.
So
well said.
we teach different things, and we have classes to teach about minimum wage, or to teach about the schools, to teach about things that people should know, to really help them fight. So we teach a lot.
How long are these classes, and when do they take place usually?
The leadership training classes typically are like once a month.
On a Saturday or something like that?
Right.
Saturday.
Okay.
And they range from, like Ms. Sanders was saying, like issue-based stuff like minimum wage, public schools, but also skill building.
Right.
So speaking to the press and understanding. I know we did one around foreclosures and understanding your rights as a homeowner, and things like that. I think there are a bunch of different leadership trainings that we do over the course of a year.
Wow, and these all come from what people are saying. This is what I'm seeing as a problem in my community.
Yes.
Wow, well, that's I mean, it's amazing and it's empowering. And these are held around the city at different centers, or where do they take place?
Our leadership training is actually to people that actually members of Action Now. So normally it's at our Action Now office.
Okay.
Okay. Now everything that we learn from what people want and what they really need. We get that from the monthly meetings.
Okay.
And we take that back, with the board. We discuss everything, and we take what's more pressing. Of course, we're going to take on everything, but we're going to take on what's more pressing first, and then go down till we get to everything that they're concerned about.
Okay, awesome. Well, we're out of time. It's been a great show and a great discussion, and sounds like you're doing great work. Congratulations, and keep at it. Thank you for coming here.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And to you, our audience, thank you for joining us. Community Forum is a community service of CAN TV. If your nonprofit organization would like to work with CAN TV, call 312-738-1400 and ask for nonprofit services. Tune into Community Forum for local issues and concerns every Saturday at 7:30 p.m. on CAN TV 21. I'm Juan Carlos Hernandez. Thank you for joining us.